Welcome to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower, where we do our best to give you useful information in 20 minutes or less. Now, here's your host, 5-time Voice Arts Awards nominee, David Brower.
Thanks, Ellen. This is David Brower. Our special guest from Denmark is Liam Naden. And Liam is a marriage and relationships coach, speaker, teacher, author, researcher. He's also the creator of the Heartfelt Process, a unique and powerful method for healing marriages and resolving any issues in a relationship quickly, effectively, and without counseling or even discussions between the couple. Sounds like the silver bullet, my friend. Welcome to the show.
Hello, David. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
You are welcome. I'm excited to have you. Tell me about the Heartfelt Process. Where did that come from? How did that originate with you?
Right. Well, I guess it's a bit interesting that, as you described in the introduction, the concept of it. But basically, I've always been puzzled for many years and asking myself the question, why do we really get the results we do in our life? And through my marriage coaching and relationship coaching, it's the question I ask myself a lot: what causes us to get the result we get in our relationships? Why are some people in a happy relationship, a happy marriage? Other people really struggle. It seems the vast majority, aren't as happy as they would like to be. And of course, we have high divorce rates and all those sorts of things. So what's really the problem? Why are people getting the results they're getting? And why are people getting the right results and other people aren't?
Yeah.
And of course, we'd all agree that, if you want results, or the results you get are really based, or they're the consequence of the actions you take. So you take right actions, you get the right results. You do the wrong things, you get the wrong results. And all that sounds good, but what I was curious about was what causes people to take the actions they do. What makes people take the right or wrong actions? And clearly, it's not about knowledge or information. Sometimes on a limited basis it is, but many people know what to do.
Yeah.
But they don't do it. And I have had many clients over the years, and I say, do this, and they say, yep, that sounds good, and they simply don't do it. And of course, other people spend years learning about something, and in a relationship setting, they might go to counseling. So they have all the information, but they're not doing the right things and they're not getting the right results. So I realized it wasn't information. And when I went on my search about this and looking for clues and looking for what really creates our results, what came to my rescue and what I discovered is what it comes down to is the biology of human survival.
Really?
And absolutely, because, and I'll explain how the biology kicks in,
okay.
But basically we are wired on a biological level to move towards pleasure and away from pain. And when you think about it, when we move towards pleasure, what are we moving towards? We're moving towards safety, we're moving towards the ability to reproduce, we're moving towards growth, all of those things that are about the survival of the species. And pain, which we're programmed to move away from, are things like danger and destruction.
Well,
and
it's the fight or flight kind of mode that some people get into.
Absolutely, that's right. And so, what drives all that, of course, or the result of that, is our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what drives the fuel, if you like, for our human survival mode is our feelings. And so I thought, well, how does it work and how do we create our feelings? Because when you think about it, the fight or flight is a good example. You feel bad, the lion is running towards you in the forest, and you turn around, you don't think about it, you just feel pain and terror and you run. So we're wired biologically to do that. And how it works and how we create our feelings is we create chemicals in our brain in response to external stimuli. So something happens, a lion runs towards us, and we're programmed, we produce these chemicals in our brain which get us to run immediately. Mm-hmm. But it also works the other way, that when we see something good that we like, including another person that we're attracted to, we produce a different set of chemicals in our brain, and that moves us towards them. And so we have more good feelings. But the interesting thing about this is, and on a biological level, what really happens is these two types of chemicals have very different effects and purposes in our brain. Mm-hmm. So when we get into the fight or flight, we produce this, or when we have a negative thought or a negative feeling, or something negative happens outside of us, and that causes us to have a negative feeling, we create these chemicals called cortisol, is the main one.
Okay.
And what the purpose of that is to shut down your thinking brain and immediately get you to react to danger. So here comes the lion. You're not designed to think about it. You're designed to just get out of the way and run, or whatever you're supposed to do. So any negative emotion that we feel, that is there purely to get us to instinctively react, to immediately get out of danger. And we use this in lots of ways, because we don't just run away from lions. But what we do, for instance, is we go, I feel bad, I'll feel better if I smoke a cigarette.
Right.
I'll feel better if I take some drugs. I'll feel better when I'm shouting at my wife. When she's shouting at me, I'll feel better if I shout back. So all of these things are just instinctual. Our brain says, what's the one thing you can do right now to get you out of pain? And usually those things are reactive and not very constructive. But the reason for that is because we're not designed to think about it. We're just designed to react.
Right. Let me ask you a question. Yeah. So I understand the fight or flight, the chemicals, that's our instinctual reaction to those kinds of things. How do you take the good chemicals to help you eliminate the bad chemicals, or do you? How does that interchange work?
Sure. Well, the interesting thing is, just to fill you in briefly about what happens when you get the good chemicals in your brain, which are, you've probably heard in things like serotonin and dopamine.
Yep.
They're all the pleasure chemicals, and they're also the chemicals that are produced in our brain when we love somebody and when we're in a loving relationship. And the more loving we feel, the more of these good chemicals are produced. But what happens when you produce those chemicals, you actually activate your thinking brain, your higher awareness, your intuition, your strategic thinking, your longer term. You're no longer in fight or flight, act without thinking. This is the part of your brain that gets you to do things where the consequences are taken into account. So you do more of the good things. Instinctively, you do the right things that get you more good results, that make you feel better.
Sure.
So the trick is, the funny thing is, so you can just see here that if you're feeling really bad, you're going to act reactively, and you're going to get bad. You're going to do the wrong thing, and you're going to get the wrong results.
Right.
If you're feeling good, and this is what happens in a relationship, you're already feeling good, you tend to do the better things. You don't react to negativity so much. You tend to just instinctively do more loving things. Mm-hmm. And that's how you get positive results in your relationship. And the real trick to this, and this is what the heartfelt process is all about, is, as you said, the real question is, how can you create good feelings out of bad feelings? And how can you, if you know that the only way you're going to get good results, the only way you're going to do things that are going to improve your relationship or your life, in fact, come from you feeling good, what happens if you're feeling bad?
Yeah.
And that's the magic question, and that's the magic of what I've been working on and what I teach people, is because you've got to say what causes those chemicals to be produced and the feelings, what causes the feelings that you have. And it's not what happens, because that stimulus, which is something like an external event, something that happened, or could even be a thought, it's not that which makes you feel a certain way, it's what you think that means.
I'll give you an example of how I deal with that.
Yeah.
My wife and I have been very happily married for 15 years. I learned very early on in the relationship, it is not what she says or how she says it. It is the intention behind what she says and how she says it. So if I understand and focus on the attention, then the negative stuff never shows up.
But the interesting thing about that, and that's a very good point, is what's really going on there is you are saying, when my wife says something, I think it means this. It's the meaning you've attached to what she does that causes you to react in the way you do.
That's right.
Whereas somebody else, their wife shouts at them. I mean, a good example is, for a woman, her husband comes home from work and he's in a bad mood and he shouts at her. Mm-hmm. And your reaction is going to determine what happens and whether that relationship is improved or not. But if you think that means that he's a grouchy old so-and-so and he shouldn't shout at you and you've been working hard all day and how dare he and it's not fair and all that,
right.
You're going to shout back
Sure.
and you're going to have a negative result. But if you think, if the meaning you give to him coming home in a bad mood is, oh, he's had a hard day and he works really hard and I know he doesn't mean it and, you know, it's just one of those things and you know, I'm not going to not get upset by it, then you act in a loving way and you get a good result.
Yeah. And that's what I feel like I do with my wife, because it takes her a lot longer to process things than it does me. And so by accepting, or at least understanding as best as I know how on any given day, what I feel her intention is, then that allows me calm to allow some time to pass so that we can actually have a calm conversation about it.
Yeah, great. So you act in a way that gets a good result.
Yes.
In other words, yeah. But, you know, this is the difference between what goes well in a marriage and what doesn't. And one of the other interesting things I discovered is the feelings. You know, people say, well, you know, I mean, there are basically 4 phases or 4 scenarios of love in a relationship. One is when you fall in love first. The second is when you stay in love. The third is when you fall out of love. I mean, obviously people don't have all of these necessarily.
Right.
And the fourth is when you fall back in love. And 3 of those things, falling in love to start with, staying in love, and falling back in love, the feelings create exactly the same brain activity for all of those things. So in other words, the feelings or the brain activity of falling in love can be the same as staying in love after 20 years.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So all you need to do, you know, because people say, well, you can't have the same love that you had when you first fell in love. But you, on a chemical brain level, you actually do.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
You just need to know how to activate those chemicals so that you feel in the right place, you automatically do the right things, and you get the right results. And that can be, you know, people I talk to who are on the brink of divorce and their husband or wife is leaving. And it's all because the only reason they want to leave is they don't feel good.
Right.
So, and you can either learn the slow way how to try and make someone feel good, or you can just automatically do the right things based on our biological programming to continue to do the right things when we feel good.
So the heartfelt process is revolutionary because that's what it does. You teach people how to focus on the right feelings. Is that basically it? Explain that to me.
Well, basically, yeah, the way the process works is you first have, and it's through a series of steps.
Sure.
And questions, if you like, that people can ask themselves, or I ask them, depending on how we're doing it. But it can be a self-taught or a self-driven thing. Basically, through a series of questions, you identify what is the meaning that I'm giving to what's happening. So when you feel a negative emotion, for instance, your husband is shouting at you, you feel negative. It's not him shouting at you that's making you feel bad. It's what you think that means.
Yes.
So the first step is you have to identify what is it about him shouting that's making me feel bad? What do I think, you know, and all the questions are things like, what do I think I'm going to lose because he's shouting at me? What does it mean? What will it mean for the future if he carries on shouting at me? So, and people have, if they feel bad, it's because they think it means something bad, what's happening.
Sure.
So that's the first important thing, is to identify what you actually think that means. And through other steps in the process, which I've developed and refined over a while, you have to come up with alternative meanings for that same event, and then use a series of other questions to actually not only weaken the old bad meanings, if you like, but come up with new ones and reinforce them to the extent you're almost acting like a court prosecutor, where you have to convince yourself that the new meanings are true, the positive meanings are true, because you can't do this just by, you know, repeating them or affirmations or anything. You literally have to rewire your brain. So
do you share this? Do you share these questions, this process with your spouse, or is this I'm going to fix myself through this program? How does that work?
Well, the beauty of it is, and as you said in the introduction, it doesn't require any talking and discussing.
Yeah. Because
when you think about it, when you first fell in love, and I'm sure this is the same for you, it's the question I ask people, and they all say the answer is yes. When did you have the least problems in your relationship? When you first got together.
Of course.
And you didn't learn any techniques for communication. You didn't do any therapy. You didn't do any, problem solving. You naturally did the right things, and you naturally got to get a good result, feel good. So this is what the process shows you to do again. Once you create those good feelings in yourself, you're going to naturally do the right things. You don't need to figure out how to, do the 7 steps of communication or the 3 whatevers. You just naturally, as you did early on in your relationship, you acted in a way that just made the other person feel good. It made you feel good, and it made them feel good. And one of the problems people have is they say, well, I'm doing all these things that I've read that I should do for them to make them feel good, but they're not feeling good.
Well,
so that tells you that it's not about learning techniques and processes on what you think you should do or what somebody else does, or because your relationship is unique. You're unique. Your own biology leading you to more pleasure and away from pain through your feelings is leading you on you have a unique way of doing that. And in your relationship, there's a unique dynamic as well. And this is why so many times, people have said to me, but I've read this book on the things I should do to, and mainly I deal with people obviously who are having problems.
Right.
So I've told that this is what I should do to make my husband or my wife love me again and heal our problems. We need to talk about it, or I need to send them flowers, or I need to tell them I love them, or, and so people read all these things and they just don't get the right result because they're not coming from a natural place of good feelings, doing the natural right things for their situation.
Makes sense. And I think sometimes, and you all know this better than I, we've only got another couple of minutes, but I think they will oftentimes, depending on how they were raised, will look at things analytically. They'll look at the black and white, and if I do A, B, C, D, E, life should be good, and they don't pay any attention to the feelings and what really brought them in love and what really can bring them back in love is the feelings, not the black and white process.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the whole point, really.
Fascinating. So when people want to, folks, go to his website. It's Liam Naden. That's Liam, Liam, last name Naden, Naden.com, LiamNaden.com, and you will see everything about Liam, his different programs, Save and Transform Your Marriage program, Stop Your Divorce, Happily Blended Family program, which is got to be huge these last few years. There's podcasts, there's videos, there's all kinds of resources here for you to check out and find that little aha moment where you want to reach out to Liam, because there's some amazing sets of opportunity here.
Thanks very much for letting me talk to you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
Listen to Your 20-Minute Podcast with David Brower on the go. Downloads are available on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, any podcast app, and on our website at davidbrowervo.com/Your 20-Minute Podcast. Until next time, thank you for listening.